And then the next pair of shoes I got, probably came in with laces, and I was like, man, what kind of sucker closure system is this? This is unnecessary. Total waste of time.
All right, everybody. How you living? No putts given. We're back. Tony, you're back.
I'm back.
Tony's back. There were no death threats. Nobody tried to fire Tony. He's back.
You just got the 1 week TO upgrade.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I am excited, Tony, because we're going to talk about why laces are for suckers, and not just in the general sense, but in a more specific data-driven sense. And we see players switching equipment all the time. Is it a good thing? What are some of the best and worst equipment switches of all time, and how can we help, the average day-to-day golfer make a better decision in terms of maybe what they should play? So, let's get into it. Boa, laces are for suckers. Where did you come up with that? Why did you come up with and it's true, laces are for suckers, but
it just seemed obvious. Like what happened, I think I'd have to go back and really think it through to figure out what my first pair of Boa shoes was. And then so I got the Boas, whatever they were. Might have been like the first Pro SL, so it hasn't been like 100 years or anything. But I got my first pair of Boas, and I was like, yeah, this is really good. This is better. And then the next pair of shoes I got, probably came in with laces, and I was like, man, kind of sucker closure system is this? This is unnecessary. Total waste of time.
Yeah, and we see Boa, for people, and it's like, right, the little twisty dial, twist. There are some companies, G4, Puma, have their own version of that. It's not Boa. It's funny. I was down at Boa, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but they said they get a tremendous number of warranty requests. People trying to send back like their Puma shoes and G4 shoes are like, hey, the system doesn't work. And they're like, right, it's not our system. So
I'll be brutally honest. Like, I obviously big Boa fan, but I've used disc and never had any issues. And so like, it's, Boa's good, but ultimately it's more of an anti-lace position.
Pro Boa or anti-lace? Which one are you?
Yeah, if I had to, I lean more anti-lace, having tried Boa.
What's the advantage? Like, we'll get to like performance stuff because I want to talk about that because I went down and visited Boa and have some things for people to think about. But for you, what is the advantage?
Yeah, for me, I have two things, right? I like that it's super easy. Like, it's fun to joke about laces, but really, like, you can put on your Boa shoes like slippers. I'm notorious, and I can't give you a good reason why I do it, but I habitually go to the golf course. Like, I'll drive to the golf course with my shoes untied, or not fully secured with Boa, as the case may be, and then I'll hop out and then I'll tie my shoes, which, again, is stupid. No practical reason for that, but in terms of just being faster,
right,
and less time once I get to the course, like, definitely Boa is faster. Again, the micro adjustability of it all. And yeah, there are some legitimate complaints where sometimes they come a little loose over the course of a round and you have to reach down and give them a click or two. But, if you've got a long round on a hot day, like, your feet swell, so it's nice to be able to kind of loosen them up and on other times tighten them up if you need to. That aspect of it is just easier. And I find, too, as the system has evolved, you get more of I'd call it like a balanced tightening, whereas laces, you kind of get, in tightening your shoe, you kind of tend to get that pull closer to where you actually tie the knot, where Boa is more of an even securing of your foot into your shoe kind of thing, I guess. So, those are the advantages. The disadvantages.
What if I was going to say, people, there's a lot of haters out there. A lot of people drinking the haterade. A lot of people not in love with the Boa, calling you lazy, calling you a lot of other things.
I think probably a lot of guys see it as a solution in search of a problem. Like, laces have worked just fine for forever. And outhouses were awesome until indoor plumbing came along, and there's countless examples. And so
wood-fired stove. If you tie your shoes, you cook dinner on a wood-fired stove. Probably still have a landline in your house too, right?
Yeah, exactly. What do I need to? And I was like that. I'm like, why do I need the internet on my phone? Like, that's dumb. And now I'm like, why wouldn't I have the internet on my phone? I'm not a sucker. So, landlines are for suckers.
Landlines are for suckers. Do you, at your guys' house, Tony, do you guys light candles for light in the evening, or do you just flip on a switch?
No, I've got switches for that kind of thing, yeah.
All right. So it's interesting, right? You get people that are anti-BOA because they see it as like, come on. Really? You can't take the 4 seconds to tie your shoes. What you lazy, son of a bitch. Why can't you?
But I mean, like, legitimately, come on, it costs $30 more. Sometimes $40 more in the case of Adidas. With the FootJoy Tour Alpha Dual BOA, which I'm very interested in trying. That's one where like FootJoy hits you with $30 per BOA. So that's a $60 upcharge, and so it's like, hey, like you're gonna have to prove to me that this is now better.
All right,
because you're taking a golf shoe that's already, I mean, that's not a cheap shoe. That's not an Innisys best value kind of shoe.
No, it is not.
And then you're adding $60 above and beyond the cost of that. So I get that piece of it where people just don't want to pay more for stuff.
So let me ask you this question. So from a performance standpoint, there's 2 parts here, 2 questions. One is, can we legitimately make an argument to see shoes as more equipment than apparel? And secondly, what would that shoe have to do for you? Like where could a shoe make a compelling case to you that it is performance? We talk about golf balls. We can quantify that, right? In terms of performance, we can look at, driver heads and CT measurements and say, yes, this one does produce X amount more ball speed than that one. Boom, we can quantify it. What about shoes? What would a shoe have to do for you to go, hey, I'll spend $60 more on that pair of shoes if it can do what?
Well, I mean, we use gauges to quantify things in Ball Lab, and we use launch monitors to quantify things in just about everything else we do. And in the kind of, I don't know that it should be exclusively kind of a footwear thing, but in that movement and kind of that type of space, you have force plates and things like that, pressure mats. So, if you can show me something in the data, whether again, it's something on a map that says, hey, we're seeing more efficient transfer of weight or something like that. I don't know. Or you can show me on a launch monitor, hey, if you've got the BOA shoe compared to the exact same non-BOA shoe, you're gaining X amount of miles per hour, or you're hitting it straighter, or whatever that metric turns out to be, right? Because it can be very difficult to choose a single metric necessarily. But if you can show me on some type of quantifiable measurement system that this is providing me benefit, then you can make the argument for spending more money above and beyond the fact that it's convenient, in my opinion, typically a little more comfortable.
Okay. So, all right. So think about this too, is we are in that era of small improvements, marginal improvements, right? Where if you're dialed in on your equipment, whatever the case is, the next version of that piece of equipment likely isn't going to be leaps and bounds better than the previous version, right? We talk about marginal improvements, tweaks, modifications, and people will willingly spend $500-$600 on a driver for a yard, 2 yards, maybe 3 yards. And that's a distance compensation, right?
Yes and no, right? It's in some cases it's reality, because if you have a driver and it's not a good fit for you, you can pick up significantly more by moving into a driver that is a good fit for you. But ultimately we've talked to Ping, and hopefully we'll have one of the guys from Ping here on at some point in the not too distant future to talk about this kind of thing. But Ping, I think, is a great example in that space where like if we can make just a few things in the design 1% better, that's real improvement.
That's a huge improvement.
That's what we're going for. We're not going to promise 10 more yards. We're not even going to try to find 10 more yards, because that's a waste of time. But if we can make a handful of things a little bit better,
right,
that's progress. And so ultimately, right,
so can a shoe be part of that, right? So I think it gets
should be right?
to that. So I went down to BOA. BOA is headquartered near me in Denver, Colorado. It started as a company really for outdoor. The guy that started it was a snowboarder and was...
I don't do that.
No, neither do I. He was basically so pissed off at the frustration level, right? So many solutions are born out of frustration, right? Where it's like, there's got to be a better way. Long story short, replaces laces, has different kind of closure systems. And a couple of years ago, BOA did something similar to what you've done with Ball Lab, or what we've done collectively as a team, and you've spearheaded Ball Lab. They have a BOA Fit Lab, and they have these PhD scientists, people down basically in this lab, trying to do exactly what we're asking them to do, which is, okay, that's great. Maybe it looks nicer. I personally think it fits better. I like the way that it fits, but that's not going to sell a lot of golf shoes, right? There has to be a performance. So can they quantify and say, without a doubt, that this BOA performance closure system is better than a laced version because it does A, B, C, and D better? That's the entire goal of this lab. And part of what they're doing is they have, they're spread out across a lot of different sports. So they have trail running stuff. So they have like labs set up where
I don't do that.
No, me neither. I when I walked in there, I saw a treadmill and a trail to run on. I'm like, oh shit. I think I'm in the wrong spot. I think I
will gingerly trail walk around a treadmill.
I set up for the wrong tour. Yeah, exactly. But then they're like, oh, okay, golf parts over here. And they have a couple TrackMan bays, really, really highly sensitive force plates. And so they have testers coming through, etc. But they are starting to be able to quantify what is the actual difference purely from a performance standpoint. And what I found most interesting is in their initial studies, and they're just maybe 10% of the way into this, right? Like you just start running tests, you don't know what you don't know. But what would you guess they found, Tony? What do you think their number one key finding was? The first time, as they got enough data, they finally said, okay, we can publish a paper that says BOA does blank. What's your best guess?
It makes lasers for suckers.
That is item number one. Item number two, they're not making distance claims.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
But what they are making, two claims that they're going to make. One is efficiency, which translates to accuracy. So they don't have enough data to support and say, hey, we think you'll hit the ball X% further. You're going to hit it just as far, but you're going to hit it that distance more often. Now, that may translate to a longer total average or something over time, but they're more interested in looking at consistency of performance over time as opposed to like a single unique peak performance attribute.
That's good. That's reasonable.
Right?
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
So it's really cool.
We'll see, right?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think to me, what's most intriguing about it is one, can we get people is there enough evidence to support the idea that shoes are performance in addition to apparel? But just as much, if there's technology in a putter, technology in a driver, there's just as much technology in a shoe. Will people resonate with that? And then secondly, what can actually be proven that we could then take and test with readers or people, or to once and for all, definitively show evidence that laces are for suckers.
Laces are for suckers. Yeah. No.
Yes. It's not just what Tony thinks. It's an undeniable scientific fact.
To be seen, I guess, when the other 90% of the data comes in.
Yeah. But that would be over the summer and stuff, and over the next couple of years, and I'll keep popping down there and maybe if you're ever out in Colorado.
So then enjoy the simplicity with the acknowledgement that, yeah, for some people the cost is more than they want to take on. And sometimes you end up with...
Right? You're limited in color. I mean, it is limited. There's not every colorway
It's limited.
Available.
Shame on manufacturers for limiting colorways, limiting wide size availability. And then the other piece of it is... And again, I think this speaks to the advancement of BOA and moving from, hey, how do we just replicate a shoelace with a cord to actually technologically advanced closure systems. You do get some funky looking designs that not everybody loves.
Right. So there are limitations. Not saying it's perfect, not saying it's the answer, but I think yes, it's going to be a fun one to watch. So Tony, what's the worst equipment decision you've ever made in your life?
I think I think buying golf clubs ever. Like if I just just picking up a golf club was in hindsight, just kind of looking at it where that is. That was a pretty bad decision.
Yeah.
Played an SLDR for a year. That's hindsight. Maybe cost me
A lot of forgiveness.
some scores. Yeah.
We don't.
I played Miura CB501, so
Did you?
tiny little cavity backs.
Yeah.
That was, again, but I think everybody when they're kind of still relatively new to the game kind of goes through this phase of, I'm going to play these obviously unforgiving clubs because they'll turn me into a better ball striker. Mm-hmm. It just, doesn't work.
Amateurs, we have a different relationship than where I want to go with this in terms of some of the professionals. Like you and I don't have the issue of someone saying, hey, Tony, we will pay you $3 million a year to play this golf ball. And by the way, your livelihood, right? You're going to play in competitive environments. You and I don't have that issue, right? But professional golfers do. And watching some golf over the last couple of weeks, some conversations going out there, it kind of got me thinking a little bit around, I want to give you some names and equipment decisions, and I want you to rank them on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, 10 being it is 100% absolutely the equipment's fault that this player's performance has changed or suffered, and a 1 being absolutely inconsequential. Every other factor in play is responsible for their change in performance, not the equipment. So that's a 1, that's a 10. We're going to start with this. Rickie Fowler switching from Titleist to TaylorMade for the golf ball specifically. What do you give it? 1 to 10.
I think this is solidly at least an 8. I think if you and look, you kind of hinted at, right? There's a million things that go on above and beyond the equipment with, hey, sometimes swings just change, sometimes life gets in the way.
Golf's hard.
I've always felt like golfers are a lot like elite relief pitchers where like just one day, like they don't have the stuff anymore, right? David Duval was like that. And so like the Mariano Rivera's, the Tiger Woods, these guys that can just do it at this extremely high level for a long time, like, that's rare. And so, sometimes golfers just kind of run into a wall and don't come back. But in terms of this, like, and it's not a knock on TaylorMade and saying, hey, it's a bad golf ball. I think there's a mountain of evidence that shows that, you can succeed as a professional golfer playing a TP5, right? That is not an
Some
issue.
guys have anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. But in Rickie's case, you take going to, I think he's in a TP5X, right?
I believe so.
And that's still a relatively, at best, it's kind of a mid-high, mid-spin ball through most of the bag.
And he was a left
Rickie
dot
was a
guy.
left dot. Rickie was a left dot guy. And so what you saw...
So how much of a difference...
he won out of the gate, which was crazy.
Right.
But you are talking about a golf ball that is wildly different. I'm sure TaylorMade has probably tried to do some things to, try and make something custom for him. But if you look at kind of the permutations of what happened in terms of, like, not only just you can point to a spot on the calendar and start to look at the decline, but then you see things like, and again, right, we've gone through different instructors. There are other things taking place here. But if you look at things like, I can't tell you how many different iron shafts Cobra has built irons for him with. It's just trying different things, trying to effectively offset the performance attributes of the golf ball and get him back to where he was. And again, lots of other stuff going on, but that's one where you just from almost as much as a golf ball can be within a legitimate tour space. Like that's moving from an apple to an orange.
I think that's huge.
That's dramatic.
That's
a dramatic one.
Yeah, huge.
And again, it's not a knock on TaylorMade. It's not saying, hey, the Titleist makes a better golf ball for everybody. It's just like this.
There's
was
not one ball
really
that's better for all, Tony.
There is not.
Okay.
But this was to me kind of a really kind of severe change within the golf ball space. So, it was aggressive.
All right.
Difference.
Here's your second one: Patrick Reed and PXG drivers.
0.
You put nothing on.
And this is one where you can point to, his distance is down and he's struggling. But then if you go back and kind of look at the historical data, his distance was in decline before he made that deal. He was already, signs of the struggle were already there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see any bit of a correlation above and beyond a talking point.
And he switched back this last week at Memorial. I think he's bounced around, I guess is the point. He hasn't been like, hey, playing this particular type or style of driver forever and then made a switch. So not much there.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right.
I think you just look at the data and say, hey, the struggles were already sort of beginning to happen with the driver, and it just made everybody probably pay a little closer attention. But, look at the data.
Yeah.
Pre-PXG, it's all there.
There was 1 year Bubba Watson switched from Titleist golf balls to volvik golf balls. And then he ended up switching back. That 1 year, performance declined noticeably. How much do you put on the golf ball in that one?
That one's probably, again, right in that 8 or 9, kind of that Rickie range again.
I'd give it an 11.
Yeah, I mean, you're moving from not only a proven commodity in this case where, Titleist has a tour pedigree that volvik doesn't.
Right.
I mean, that's hard to argue.
Right.
And then just kind of, I think, at the time, right, volvik had the yellow ball, and Bubba thought that was cool, and initially didn't think he could see much of a difference. And then, with a year's worth of experience, I guess it was pretty clear. So that was, that's another case where I think, and it's, I think in general, the ball, I was kind of thinking about this morning. I was in Ball Lab, just kind of measuring balls, and my mind wanders when I'm doing that because it's repetitive. I'm thinking in terms of the complexity of golf equipment from a design perspective, I think the ball is probably the single most complex piece of equipment there is. When you get into the chemistry and the various layers and how they work together, and then the aerodynamics package, which is almost entirely separate, but still has to work with the launch and spin characteristics, man, it's a lot. And so you could see the case, if you're kind of locked in on one specification, especially if you are an elite player like Bubba or Rickie, and you move to something that is fundamentally a different specification, it's not an easy adjustment.
No.
Because it literally affects every other club in your bag. I mean, to a degree, even the putter with kind of the feel coming off in some cases, but
sure.
But certainly that's going to affect the performance of your driver, your irons, certainly your wedges. And so, I mean, especially if you move from something that is not really that similar to what you were playing.
Is that what happened? So 3, 4, 5 years ago, Brooks Koepka, right, goes out, and I think we may talk about this with Mizuno guys when they come on later too, but basically designed an iron for him that he never he had ended up playing, obviously, but not entering a contractual agreement around. But this was the Brooks Koepka iron. He goes on to win multiple majors, right? Multiple
It
events.
looked like he was going to win them, like at least every U.S. Open. That was just
and he was really, really dialed in, right? Obviously, he's playing super well. He signs a full bag deal with Strixon, and this includes the ball. I think he's playing the Z Star, right?
The diamond,
diamond,
basically made for Brooksy, from what we can tell.
And where's he been?
So this is another case where, again, there's a lot going on. Obviously, you never know all the nuance, but this is one, again, where if you kind of go back and look at it, and I'd actually talked to Lou Stagner a little bit about it. And I'm like, I'm worried about the ball, because I'm always worried about the ball.
Sure.
Is that
your first go-to?
That's one. It is, because it's a little thing that, again, like, what the average guy perceives as no difference at the tour level is a significant difference. So you talk about Bubba, right, with a high launch, relatively high spin Pro V1X to a low launch, excessively high spinning volvik, like that's going to have an implication. And so when Brooks made the jump to the ball, like the Strixon stuff holds up. Like I felt pretty confident in that, especially when you talk about capabilities of fitting tour players and things like that. Mm-hmm. But this is another case where if you go back and kind of look at the data, there was already some suggestion that, I don't want to say declining, but, sort of was not performing at the same level he was when he was winning U.S. Open. So this is a case where, maybe it's a factor. The equipment is always a factor to some degree, but I'm not sure it was as significant a factor. Again, more of a kind of a Patrick Reed situation.
So what are you going to give this one? 1 to 10?
4.
4 or 5, somewhere in the. Yeah, my other thought with that too is, I think it depends to what manufacturers you're switching from. Like you said, a big switch, and I think this is a place amateurs, people like you and I can think through this stuff too, is like if you're really dialed in with a certain style or type of equipment, how much of a switch is it, right? Going from Mizuno, the JPX forged, right? Going from the Tour forged head to a Strixon ZX series isn't a huge switch. We're talking minimal offset, player's cavity back, designs.
A really good iron to a really good iron.
You're going from a really, really good iron. Yeah, you're going from a Mizuno Chuo forged iron to an Endo forged Strixon iron. I think they're both phenomenal products, and Strixon probably doesn't get enough credit in that space. So I don't see the equipment piece. And then you match up the shafts. Hey, here's the shaft I'm with. Here's my specs. Loft lie, da-da-da-da-da. I would think getting like fairway wood and driver dialed in might be more of a challenge in that. And I don't know, Brooks was historically, right, largely TaylorMade guy. How much of a difference is that moving to Strixon in that particular club? That's why I would put it somewhere in that middle spot. I wouldn't rank it as like a 0 or a 1. I'd put it more in that 4 or 5 range probably.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And again, like the ball to me, that's always going to be, kind of where I'm looking at. And we haven't had a chance to test the Z-Star Diamond on a robot and just kind of understand what the launch and spin characteristics of that ball are relative to the Pro V1X. But again, I would imagine that recipe is going to be tailored to Brooks in much the same way, in a little different scenario, but where, Mizuno was like, yeah, what do we think this guy would want out of an iron? Let's make it and see if we can get him to play it. And that's, so I think it's going to, the ball be,
apparently.
Yeah. So I think that'll be relatively well suited to him. So yeah, I think, 4, maybe 3 or 4. That's me. You say 4 or 5 probably, but that's certainly in that middle range.
This is a weird one. All right. And I want to get your take on this, obviously, but Justin Rose and Honma.
It's one of those things, like it's almost unfortunate for Honma, which barely exists in the North American market now after having Justin Rose. But I mean, let's be honest, like he won a major, and that's no small thing, but then what? And kind of disappeared a little bit, signed the Honma deal, disappeared some more, basically re-engaged with TaylorMade, I believe, and he's right where he was when he signed the Honma deal, effectively. So, like it's just one of those things where, one of the R&D guys I talk to every now and again, sometimes he's like, sometimes it is the equipment. He's like, but at this level, sometimes it's not the equipment, right? It's that between the ears kind of thing, and I think that's what you're seeing with Justin Rose. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that just looked really bad for Honma, but I think
I give this one like,
I mean, they were irons they made for him based on something that was kind of already made for him,
right?
And so like it's that
we ended up looking an awful lot like irons he then was playing with TaylorMade, not very
so
long
it's like, hey,
thereafter.
we gave you exactly what you wanted, and it didn't work out. So
So what should an amateur
check with the
golfer,
Morgan Stanley guys? I don't know.
Well, what should an amateur golfer take from this? Because again, these pros are basically weighing money, and oftentimes pretty significant sums of money to change or play different equipment as opposed to what they are. How does this impact you and me and Joe 3 putt?
Right? Nobody is paying you to pay their equipment, and so there's fundamentally no reason why you shouldn't play what works best for you.
Right.
And that seems like an obvious statement, but and part of that comes through fitting. So I'll make the case for fitting as I like to do and haven't done in a while, and that's that I always say, hey, just get fit and trust, find a good fitter and trust him to find what's going to work best for you, and then try and stick with it for a little while. And that's it's a very hypocritical statement coming from me, but that's kind of the nature of our job, is I have to an extent play around with all this stuff.
Sure.
But
sure. Yeah, I think that too is that we, as much as people say they're not influenced by certain things, they are. consumers are dumb in that regard. Like, I was out playing last week, and a guy I was playing with, I made like 3 putts in a row that were of decent length. He's like, oh, let me see that putter. Oh yeah, I like this. Oh, this feels good. Right. And it's like, this guy, really, really smart guy, retired. I think he was a physician, doctor of some type. And right now he's investigating a study, basically whether or not he should buy a new putter based on a sample size of 3 putts by me. And he's going to make some grand determination. Like, would you walk into a doctor's office and be like, oh, man, that guy just snatched that guy's liver out. Let's, that looks like a nice knife. Can I borrow that real quick? Like,
So like, I'll tell you, like, I was playing,
Like,
I played the TSI 4 for a good bit of last year. Before getting fit into the TSI 3. I just, I probably knew that the TSI 3 was going to be the better one for me. I just didn't have the right combination of parts laying around to make it work. So I was hitting the TSI 4 really well, hitting it straight, hitting it a long way. And I was out, I think it's like the only round I played with my buddy Jeff. And we're on the 17th hole. And he's like, we both hit drives and whatever. Mine was pretty good. And he's like, hey, can I try that? So he tees up the TSI 4, takes one swing, hits this massive high draw, 17. So he's up, he clears the hill.
Goes over the hill.
Up rolling. He's rolling on the hill, which is not typically where he's going to be. He went out and bought one the next day. It was just like, so, hey.
And Jeff's a smart guy.
Like,
Jeff's not.
Yeah, one. Well, he's an Ohio State fan, so loosely, there's some wiggle room there. But like he bought off one swing, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So patience, discipline, pay attention to those things. I guess the other thing for me is, don't pay attention to what pros are playing. It makes no difference. Like, the reasons they're doing certain things may be very basic, like, this company is paying me more to play a product that I know isn't as good a fit for me, but the cost outweighs whatever performance degradation there is, or I think I'm good enough to either overcome it or it's not that big of a deal. There's all these type of things going on in these contract negotiations that have zero bearing on the amateur game, right? You look at this is what's in the bag for Billy Horschel from this week. Great. That works for Billy. But even if it works for him, you have no idea why that works for him. That combination of ingredients. And my biggest thing would be, if you're an amateur golfer, quit paying attention to what any pro is playing ever. I just want to look at it.
Reasonable.
I want to look at it. Or I want to say quit paying attention. Don't let that impact or become a criteria as to why you play what you play for you.
Yeah. Because again, TaylorMade, Callaway, Titleist, pick a name. They're not paying you to play.
No.
All these guys are... No.
Be your own brand. Be your own brand.
See what happens with the Live Tour. If guys start getting dropped from their contracts, maybe we'll see some equipment changes that are driven by actual performance.
Wouldn't that be something? Can you think? Last question, Tony. Can you think of anybody the exact opposite, where they've made an equipment change and seen a significant improvement in performance that you would go, I think
you could point to just about all, if not all, of the PGA guys who moved out of Nike drivers and Nike golf balls when Nike kind of went belly up on the equipment side of things. So, that's one where if you kind of look at the USGA distance insight reports and the charts, like you see two kind of abnormal spikes in distance. The biggest one obviously being when the Pro V1 solid core ball hit, and the other is, when the Nike guys swapped drivers and, the tour average went up because of it. And, some of those guys picked up double digit gains moving out of Vapor Heads into TaylorMades and
old
Titleist and Callaway.
Maybe.
Yeah. So that's, that's
think about how much that would have to change to move an entire average on tour. That's a lot. Like,
you got a dozen plus guys all hitting it, somewhere between 5 and 15 yards longer. It's obviously not it's not going to shoot up like solid core does, but
Right.
you're like, oh yeah, there, what happened there? Nike happened or unhappened.
Yeah. I would think it's interesting to see when players switch putters, pieces of that are maybe psychological. Like earlier this year, Scotty Scheffler switched prior to this run that he's been on. And if you talk to him or read any of the interviews with him, he just kind of wanted something that looked a little different. He wanted a fresher, clean look. Now, it's not a huge change from what he was using before. It's not like he did the Rickie where, Rickie went from a, Newport 2 style head to now he's, experimented with a number of different mallet designs.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's significant. Adam Scott, I would throw his name in there. If you look at his strokes gained putting over the last 10, 12 years, a lot of those numbers are negative for the whole season. There's a couple times in there, I think, 21 or 20 to 21, he was 18th on tour in strokes gained putting. Had a really good year thus far. I think this year through last week, he's like 34th in strokes gained putting on the PGA Tour, which I don't think anybody would maybe pick that number, but you look at guys that had to deal with the anchor ban and effectively try to find a different way to putt in some cases, to their benefit, and some cases not to their benefit. But the putter one, it's always an interesting one for me to watch because some guys, like DJ will switch like 3 times around. Like he may do that, and Tiger will never switch. It seems. I mean, yeah, he did experiment with a couple little things here and there, but
he experimented shortly after Nike was one of the last sponsors not to drop him. So there's a working theory there, right? Some negotiation into a method for a little bit. So
yeah, and
things happen, and there's always, right. That's part of the story with the tour equipment contracts is the stuff that happens behind the scenes, and that piece of it you just never really know for sure.
No, is it 100% performance driven, right? As opposed to
definitely not.
What are some of those other factors that might be encouraging a player to, play one particular club over another, something like that. But I don't know, Tony. I don't know. What's one piece of equipment that you can almost guarantee will stay in your bag all year this year? You're not changing.
Yeah, it's well, let's see. Knowing timelines for releases, I can't commit to Metalwoods at this point. So,
all right. So there's at least wait in your bag. Metalwoods, does that include hybrids? Are we talking like 6, 7 clubs now, or like 4 or 5 clubs?
So I only have. Do I have? I only have none hybrids in the bag right now.
Really?
Which is weird. Yeah, I don't have any at the moment. Because I ditched the 5 hybrid for a 5 iron when I started being able to hit a 5 iron.
Okay.
So that was good. And then the 4 hybrid fell out this year because kind of the 7 wood kind of took its spot.
Love that.
Which is because it's silly.
I love
it doesn't.
Which
it
7
doesn't.
wood?
It's a TSI 2.
I love that.
So it doesn't move much left or right. It just wants to go straight, and so that's.
I would hit that on number.
I've talked about this before, right? If you have a club like, I don't always hit a beautiful, perfect shot, but I very rarely hit an awful shot. Like that's like everything's generally pretty good, so that works. So high and straight works for the most part. So the 7 wood's in, no hybrids, irons, boy. Yeah, you know what? I think. The golf ball is not going to change, and I think, as I wait for one more wedge, when that new wedge comes, that'll be it for the year as well.
I would agree. So everybody stay tuned. Make sure you go out there in the interwebs, find us and follow us at GolfSpy at GolfSpy. This was 105. Only 6 more episodes until the big reveal, Tony. The big
or not.
No Putts Given 111. It's going to get crazy. So stay tuned, everybody. We out.